Hello and welcome to the 14th episode of Ask a DM, the D&D Q&A show where I bring on a guest and we answer your questions. And I've pre-populated a load of questions from Twitter and Discord, but for all of you who are watching live, go ahead and put any questions you have for us in the chat. And if you're watching this after the fact, put any questions down in the comments and then I'll get to them next week instead. But let me introduce who I have this week for you. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, Sam?
Yeah, my name is Sam Comerford. I am the Twitter goblin behind Roleplaying and Rollplaying. I'm the founder, and I make ideas. I don't know if I can swear on here because the title of all these ideas, the brand, is a little profane. So I don't know if I can get away with that. But we're known for we have a podcast. It's goofy, it's silly, and we make fun memes and crappy D&D ideas. So it's kind of what our little shtick is. But yeah.
Very nice. Yeah. I appreciate you not swearing for the
Yeah.
for the YouTube algorithm. I appreciate that. So yeah, each week we always start with asking you some questions about your DM style, so everyone can get a little gist of what style of DM you are. So first off, do you usually homebrew or do you run modules?
I am 100% homebrew. I can't do modules.
Not at all. Have you ever tried or?
Have I ever run one myself? No, I have. I've played in a couple, but I've never run one. No.
Oh, why is that? What's the thing that holds you back?
A really big part of DMing, GMing for me is world building. I really enjoy that, and I feel like just having a pre-built thing kind of takes away from that. At least for me, I totally get why people do it. It's not for me. I like to be able to just change stuff on the fly and whatnot, and have it be my own beast, as it were.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's quite a universal thing across DMs that like to make their own thing. It's just a little bit less satisfying if you're running someone else's thing. And I think you brought up a good point there as well, that you can't really on the fly just make stuff up and go a completely different direction without knowing the module inside and out. So it's a little bit harder there. So what level of characters do you like to DM for?
Typically I'll run for anyone, but I guess I'd prefer 3rd to 5th level, that kind of spread. Just because
Sorry, ignore my camera. It's just
no
me focusing
worries.
on my face.
Just because it's not as complicated. There's less rule crunch kind of in the way. And you have less hit points, which makes the threat of death a little bit scarier without, revivify or whatever.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah.
I think a lot of people prefer the lower levels. I did see a stat a while ago about the amount of campaigns that get to higher level, and it's actually very few get to the 15 plus, especially. So I think a lot of people prefer the lower levels. Cool. So we got Rich maybe coming in and saying, "Hey, how's it going? Thank you for coming by, Rich." And Mr. Kage coming by and saying hi, and that he's just passing through, and we'll be back later. So awesome. Let's start on the questions from Twitter. And anyone who is watching live, just put your comments, put your questions in the comments. There you go. I was wondering if my camera was ever going to stop trying to find my face again there. It's gone. Okay, so we got Shay3181 asked, how long have you been role playing? Is your experience strictly D&D or is it something different?
Yeah, I've been role-playing for about 6 years now. My uncle introduced me to 5e by having us make characters and then promptly TP King, just everyone. Wonderful first session. I've been hooked ever since. And it's just D&D. It was for a long time, but I've recently been getting to a lot of other TTRPGs, a lot of stuff from, if you know, Titanomancy. They make Caltrop Core. I've done a couple of those games that are awesome. I play some Fate. And I personally am a big Coen Brothers fan, so I love Fiasco. I think it's a really fun TTRPG. But yeah, that's kind of the extent of what I'm at right now. I would really like to broaden my horizons even more, perhaps go back, play 3.5e, what have you. But yeah, it's kind of where I'm at.
Nice. Well, I think it is always good to broaden your horizons a bit because you learn stuff from different systems. I've only played Pathfinder and D&D Fifth Edition in the fantasy space, but and I always get the name of this one wrong. I think it's called Ten Candles,
Oh
um,
yeah, 10
the horror
candles.
one. I played that once, and even just in that one session, I learned a lot about horror that I can then use in D&D to
Oh
try
yeah.
and get the atmosphere a bit better. So that was quite fun. I do also need to broaden my horizons a bit more because I know there's a lot more out there. So we got Rich Mary asking if you do like to homebrew and world build. Can you tell us a bit about your world?
Which one? I have I have a lot. It's kind of my hobby to just world build, create characters. As people who follow me on Twitter know, that is literally what I do every single day. But world building, the one I've most recently made is it's based on sort of if you've read like The Way of Kings or anything by Brandon Sanderson, his Cosmere, it's kind of based off that. And it was this big, it's like Discworld kind of meets that. So it's a big Discworld that kind of shattered into these different planes that have these aspects and whatnot. And there's travelers between these realms, and meteors from the different planes have different properties if they end up on other shards and whatnot. It's like this complicated system of magic and whatnot. You can tell how incredibly nerdy I am for getting into this kind of stuff. I've got like geopolitics down for this. Like it's a lot. I really enjoy it. Yeah, that's kind of the gist.
I think it's good. You can tell when a DM loves world building because the amount that they put outside of the game. Like there's a lot of GMs, and it's absolutely fine to just want to pick up a module and just run it for a bit of fun. But
Of course.
there are people who absolutely love world building and then put loads of into it, and then most of it that will never actually come up in games.
Yep.
And you just cry to yourself in your bedroom thinking about it all. I don't think I've ever actually spoken properly about my main world. I'll get the gist. I guess the hook for mine is it's very low magic because so essentially there was an event where the Seven Sisters, which are some elven sisters, they basically broke through the highest level tiers of spells. So they managed to get to 12th level spells, is how you'd think about it from a mechanical point of view. And then sorry, I just saw a comment there from Fred. Hi, Fred. So they broke through to that, but they were not good, and they believed they were above everyone else. So they essentially started, I guess, a cult and started a big war. But they managed to get overrun basically purely by numbers because the entire continent turned against them and they had a very small army. So they managed to get overrun and dealt with. But the people who run the western part of the continent now have enforced extremely strict laws against spellcasting to make sure it doesn't happen again. And that's like the main premise is that spellcasters, like 4 or 5 years spellcast, if anyone cast a spell outside of their jurisdiction, they were just immediately killed. They were just executed. Wow. So it's like, so from the player's point of view, some of the players like the fact that they're spellcasters, but they have to keep it secret and then they have to like be careful with it.
Sure.
And that's sort of, I guess, the hook of it is that it's relatively low magic world, which also means tech has got a bit better because when people couldn't do magic, they started looking at science instead.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, that's my world.
It's cool, man.
As I said, thanks for coming by, Fred from How to D&D. He said, I don't like YouTube. It never tells me when you're live, but everyone else pops up. YouTube must just have something against me. I knew it. That's why I haven't got many views on my last video. Right, let's take another question from Twitter. So G Bloodworth asked, "How do you help players remember critical information, especially if something happened a long time ago in real world play?"
So I mean, I don't know anyone who doesn't love players who take notes. That's just a blessing to anyone. But to help people remember critical information, it's a lot of repetition, you know? Just even to the point, not ad nauseum necessarily, but to the point where they get it, right? They get what their goal is, what possibly could be happening. I love history checks so much. Even if they're just trying to remember something that they've done in the past, maybe even play a low DC one, or even don't, they shouldn't be really unless it's something they don't know yet. I don't usually punish players for not being able to remember something that their character would. I would just be like, oh, your character would know this, that, and the other thing, and be like, okay, I got you. Because I mean, it's a game. I'm not gonna expect you to be some critical role level person who's got like these notes or whatever, who's just constantly thinking like, all right, what would my character do in this exact situation? What's going on? I've got this, that, and the other thing. But my third uncle, twice removed, is doing something. I got to think about that. Got to take that comparison. No, it's a game. People enjoy it. People have fun. And I'm gonna help you have fun any way that I can. So it's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, I think that's a good message. Just whatever helps people have fun. If something happened 2 years ago and they don't remember it, you can't punish someone for that. I have had players which do love the whole taking notes and knowing stuff, and they find it quite rewarding when they're like, "Oh yeah, that character from session 2." So I reward that if they do take the time to take notes and genuinely remember small stuff. Then reward it in different ways. Like inspiration's the obvious way, but there's a few different ways. But yeah, I've done the history checks as well to see how much they remember. But I'd say most of the time I just tell them if it's something that happened ages ago. Rather than helping them in a way, I'll just say, "Oh yeah, so this is that character from when you met them in this place, and this thing happened." Because as a DM, you have to remember everything.
Yeah,
that is your job.
Yeah,
pretty much. Okay, we've got a question coming in from Fred at How to D&D. So, do you think dueling spells are good in D&D 5e, such as Shield, Counterspell, and Silvery Barbs?
Ooh, that is a tricky question because I'm fine with Shield. I think it might, like, if we moved up a level, I think I'd be okay with it. Counterspell is good. I despise Silvery Barbs. It is so powerful. It is crazy good. Like, it first level, just completely reversing just anything that happens on the battlefield, like insane. Just so good. So I'm not a fan of Silvery Barbs as is.
Do you ban it from your game or not that much?
I allow it. I just tweaked it so that instead of having, you could just do attack saving throw or like just attack saving throws and skill checks. I have an or, and you can change it every morning. You have to pick one.
Okay.
So it gives the player a little bit of agency. Like, all right, what do I think I'm going to need for today? But just having that on the back burner is being able to completely reverse something and then give advantage to someone else is like, oh my god, that's crazy. But I'm totally fine with dueling spells. They're a lot tougher to balance, is I think the issue.
Yeah, I definitely think I've been lucky, I guess, that I haven't had Silvery Barbs come up in a game yet, so I haven't felt the hatred that a lot of others feel towards it. I think dueling spells are difficult because I've had it in the past where counterspell's been used by the player, and it's been an awesome moment, like an absolutely clutch moment that saved the day, and everyone felt awesome and it was great. But then I've also had it the other side where I've used it as an NPC and it's just sort of left a sour taste in everyone's mouth because it was a bit like I felt like I got cheated. So it is hard from an enjoyment point of view to balance dueling spells, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess my philosophy is, if a PC can do it, there's a potential that the NPC can also do that. You know, and we always got to tell people that's the expectation. And I've been in games where like, yeah, you're a PC, you're going to be pretty wacky compared to everyone else. I'm like, all right, cool. But just the way I typically run my games, I'm like, look, if you can do this, at least have the expectation that somebody else might be able to do it.
Yeah,
and I've had my spell counterspelled. It blows. It sucks. I mean, it's part of the game. That's why it's there, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I do think they're good though. I would actually like to see more dueling spells, to be fair. I think, as I said, there's been some awesome parts with shield and counterspell. I haven't had Sylvie Barbs come up, but it would be quite cool to have like a back and forth dueling situation in the middle of combat.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like them. Good question though, Fred, as always.
Indeed.
Right, back over to Twitter. So Chaos Casters asks, what's your favourite party dynamic that you've been a part of? Quite a hard question, huh?
Yeah, is that in terms of class? Is that in terms of people I'm playing with?
I would take it however you want, but I would take it as in like so I played a character where we were brothers and sisters, and there was like sort of banter or that kind of thing between us.
I am a huge fan of like having the straight man, right? Just someone who's very much like, I don't know, just your kind of typical human fighter who's in it for the money or whatever, you know. And then you have like your wild magic sorcerer goblin who is chaos incarnate, and they just play off each other like, "What are you doing? Stop doing that!" And they'll be like, "I need the beans." The fun just writes itself, and the interactions between that are great. Really, if everyone in the party's chaotic, nothing gets done. But if everyone is like just this forward-thinking person, for me at least, I don't find that as fun. It's just that dynamic of different people on that scale of chaos to order that really kind of sticks those relationships together.
Yeah, definitely. I think it in the same vein as well, a cleric and a like rogue or like a criminal and a goody as well can have the same dynamic where the rogue's like just trying to steal one last thing before they leave and the cleric's like, "Go on, we gotta go."
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that as I said for mine, I did a brother sister thing with a player and that was a lot of fun. I think any characters where you can put in that you've known each other for a very long time is fun to do, because we were just like making stuff up on the fly. Really, we were just like, "Oh yeah, do you remember that time when we did blah 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 blah?" Or this is like that time we did blah blah blah, and it made it feel a lot deeper than it actually was. And I think it makes the whole table better because people are like, "Oh wow, these people are like really go deep into their characters and into their backstory."
Yeah.
So I think that's probably my favorite dynamic of the people who have been together for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So we got Wondrous Maps asked, how do you decide what magic items to include in your game?
They look cool and they're thematic. I'm not one to really balance magic items, as it were. As long as the party kind of feels like they're of each an equal power level, or at least close in terms of just cumulative what they can do. I feel like that usually tends to tide people over. And I mean, I can either give someone a +1 stick or a +4 great sword of god killing. And if everyone has something similar, then I can just balance encounters accordingly. You know, it's just whatever works thematically, as opposed to being just, oh, you find a +1 sword. I like to put a little flavor into that.
Do you ever do roll tables, or is it all
No,
you decide?
I just decide. If I ever do a roll table, it's something I've made myself.
Okay.
But yeah, typically I like to plan what I'm gonna give after something. And if not, I'll just make up an item on the spot and usually regret it later.
Yeah, I've definitely done that. Um, yeah, I do the same. The only time I use roll tables or if it's genuinely a horde, like if they found like a goblin horde where they'd been ransacking villages, then I might use random rolls to determine some of the stuff. But most of the time, I decide, oh, this would be cool for this character. Let's put it in, and they can get it. Or I create side quests for them to get magic item. I quite
Mm,
enjoy doing that. So if the archer wants a really cool bow, then I'll just dangle a little carrot of, oh, there's this thing over here that with this cool thing that if you go do this, you might get a cool bow. And
right.
most of the time, when they've got some downtime, they'll be like, oh, I'd actually quite like to go do this thing. And then it's like a little side quest to basically so they can get a cool item. But
Yeah.
then you have to make those items really cool. Like it would be not satisfying at all if they did all that. And then it's like, yeah, you get 10+1 arrows. Good job.
Yeah, exactly.
So it has to be quite cool to do that. But yeah, that's generally my approach. What is your favorite class to play? I'm pretty sure we get this question every single week, but
Ooh, that is tricky. Um, I'm a big fan of Bard and Rogue. I love kind of cheesing social encounters. That's I'm not a min max in terms of damage usually. It's like how high can I get on this persuasion check? Um, that's typically if I ever do min max, which I rarely do anymore. That's usually the route I'll go. But that's why I like Bard and Rogue. They're just skill monkeys. I really enjoy that. But Paladin will always be my favorite class. It was just it's I always enjoy it, just the divine smites, just stacking on that damage, being able to be a face, being able to heal. It's just like the middle of the road class, it's good at a lot of stuff. And I mean, the insane amount of stuff you get for saving throws too. Just a great class. I really enjoy it.
nice. I've not actually played Paladin. I don't think. I think that's one of the few classes I've never played. So
Hmm.
yeah, I'll need to get to it. I just saw another question that's coming from Rich actually, which sort of ties in. Which is, do you always DM or have you played a character? And tell us about a character you've played. But I very rarely get to play. I usually DM. So I'm a forever DM. I think I've only ever played 2 proper characters where I've played them
Really?
for an extended period of time. I played like one shots with random characters,
Sure.
but I've only actually played 2 characters for an extended period of time. So, but yeah, go ahead, tell us about some characters you've played.
Yeah, I usually DM, but I love playing. I think more than I like DMing, especially if it's like a passionate DM and we can kind of just match that sort of energy. I really enjoy that. A character that I play, you know what? Let's make this a podcast thing. Character I play in season 2 of our podcast. It's called Warren Morris. It's in a Western-ish setting, like a Weird West. He is a gunslinger. He's a warlock gunslinger who can summon his firearm to him and uses it as a spell focused for his Eldritch blasts. And he is very kind of suave, or at least I try to play him that way. Um, and I've heard him compared to Dutch Vanderland from the Red Dead series. And he's pretty close to that, I'd say. And I really enjoy him. I enjoy him a lot. He's a fun character to play.
Cool.
Yeah.
I my last one, oh yeah, my last one was a warlock tiefling. It sounds pretty basic, but I I played him very. He was archfey
Mm.
patron, and it was very like trickery / enchantment style. So in combat, I was going to say he wasn't that good in combat, but he was because they get Eldritch Blast. So by default, warlocks are always okay in combat. But
Yeah.
most of the spells were stuff like Charm Person, Suggestion, Major
Oh
Image,
yeah.
and stuff like that. So it was more that kind of thing, which is a lot more enjoyable for me. I've never been a mid maxer at all. A mid maxer.
Yeah.
And then my other one was Tempest Cleric, which was great fun because you just hit
Nice.
things hard with thunder and lightning and feel awesome. It's
Hell
pretty
yeah.
much all he does.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty good. Cool. So you got Fred asking, how do you deal with monster knowledge checks from player characters in Dungeons and Dragons games?
It depends. Typically I don't use monsters from like the manual or anything. I like to homebrew my own stuff. I'll pull some stuff from monsters in the books. Like I had recently I had a train mimic battle in a campaign I was running, and I based it off of a adult silver dragon stat block. Kind of just expanded it from there. Uh, but in terms of knowledge checks, I like it depends on who's asking. Because I mean, for the druid, I might make it like, oh, nature or survival. Check what you know. Maybe it's a history check for the wizard. Maybe it's more of an arcana check. It really varies on who's asking and where they would have gotten information on this, if at all.
I think that's a similar approach that I take. I make it. Well, I think does it actually make sense for them to have any knowledge on it? Like if
Right.
they're a wizard, then it's much easier to be like, oh yeah, in one of your studies, or like in a book you read ages ago, you heard about the X. But if it's like a rogue or a barbarian that never does any sort of studying, then I might just say outright that no, you don't know anything about this monster some of the time or this creature. But yeah, most of the time I'll go down the nature, arcane, or sometimes just a straight intelligence roll. If I think it doesn't really fit into something, I'll just get them to do an intelligence roll.
Yeah.
But that's usually how I'd go about it. And then yeah, I think the thing here as well is, so how much would you give away if they were successful? So say someone wanted to know about a basilisk and they got a natural 20, would you go as far to tell them, oh yeah, they turn people to stone, or do you try to keep mechanics out of it?
I don't view that as mechanical. If they turn people to stone,
Right.
that's an action. That's something they can do. And I mean,
Yeah,
if you
that's
know what
true.
a basilisk is, you would know that they turn people to stone. I'm not gonna give them like, oh yes, they're typically they have 56 hit points, and their
Yeah,
armor class is 15. No, that's something you find out as you fight them.
yeah,
But I mean, if we were fighting like a flesh golem and someone rolled in at 20, I'd be like, you know, fire doesn't do much to these guys. In fact, probably not a great idea to attack them with fire.
yeah,
Uh, just kind of, you can, I usually take a mechanical aspect, especially a vulnerability or some sort of attack, and rephrase it in world sense. Because you don't want to be like, oh yeah, this thing has like a strength of 20. Who cares? You know?
yeah.
Uh, you just got, you gotta just gamify it, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a good thing that a lot of people probably won't do. They'll go down the route of talking about like what they are and maybe a bit of flavor of them. But I am also in the seat of being like, oh yeah, just so you know, trolls have been known to regenerate, stuff like that. So
Yeah.
that to give them a bit of advantage, but only if they roll well, of course,
Oh
or
yeah.
if they go out their way to study it or something. Definitely. Cool. And we got Rich saying, I'm assuming that's supposed to say catch you guys later. Have a good one. But it says church you guys later. So thanks for popping by. Right, on to the next one from Twitter. How do you deal with burnout?
Oh
So I think
boy.
that's
How do I deal with burnout? Typically, I'll ask to be in a one shot as a player. That'll kind of get me back in my groove. Like, I hate picking apart other people's DMing styles, but I'll start to think of what I would do in that situation. I'm like, I should DM sometime soon. And that typically just kind of gets my brain going again. That, or I'll just listen to some soundtracks. I am a huge music person. I know that sounds so basic, but my life really kind of revolves around it. I've kind of set musical cues for myself. I have specific music I use for when I want to feel creative. I have music that I listen to when I want to get stuff done. It's very like segmented. I just got like to trick my little ADHD goblin brain into thinking the right thing at the right time. Yeah, so I have creative music that I'll switch on. I'm like, all right, come on, think. Let's do this. Let's do the DMing thing, and then I'll usually get into it by the time I start.
That's it. That's really good, actually. I also put on music when I get creative. I wouldn't say I've used it as a cue though. That's quite unique, I think. But I use music when I want to get in the groove and get like deep into making stuff. The other thing that I like to do, and I know not everyone likes to do this, but I quite enjoy watching other people stream games or listening to other people's podcasts.
Yeah,
Um, and I have had times in the past where I've been like really unmotivated to play because I've been burnt out. I've been like, oh, I really can't be bothered to DM this week or whatever, and I will just take a break. I'll say, oh, I'm not feeling it this week. Let's do next week, and then I will listen to a podcast or I'll watch a stream or something like that, and that will get me back into the groove of wanting to do it again when they're good. Obviously,
yeah,
unfortunately, sometimes I've come across ones which have been a bit dull and that's not had the same effect.
yeah,
But it happens. But yeah, I'd say that's how I deal with it. Take a break, one, if you're having full on burnout, and then two, find out something that motivates you to get creative again, which could be music, could be movies, could be other streams, could be video games, wherever it is. There'll be something that will
yeah.
get you motivated again, hopefully. Cool. Right, so we're about halfway through now. So if you have been enjoying this, please do give it a like. It helps show it to other people. And if you do have any questions, make sure to put them in the chat and we will get to them. At the moment, we are going through a couple of the questions that we got from Twitter. And on to the next one. So we've got do you run more passives beyond the given perception and investigation?
I do. I am a big fan of passive insight. I don't think just generally, if you have a really high insight modifier and then you roll like a nat one, I don't know. Like if you just have like a passive vibe check, like I just be like, yeah, this guy's giving you some sketchy vibes, just outright. And then they'd be like, okay, let me delve a little deeper to that. And then if they roll one, I'm like, you just know they're giving you some sketchy vibes. You're not sure about what. You can't place it, but they're kind of there. As for passive stuff, I kind of take a page out of Fate's book sometimes, very rarely, for checks like athletics or acrobatics. Sometimes I just say, yeah, you do that. Like if they have a plus 10 to athletics, I'm like, you pick them up. Congrats, you did it. Amazing. And I mean, that typically doesn't happen. I like to roll stuff, but when it does, it plays into it pretty quick. It makes the game a lot faster. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've had it before where, talking about athletics, I've had it before where I made someone roll for athletics to essentially get up something which was extremely easy. And this was early in my DMing days. And I thought in my head, oh, the DC for this will only be 5 because it's really easy. And then the player had just happened to roll natural 1 3 times in a row. So didn't get over that thing, and afterwards I was like, well, why did I even make them roll for that? That was such a waste of time, because although it was a bit funny that they failed, it just sort of stopped the game, because every other character, they was trying to get over a thing, and every other character managed to do it easy, and then this one couldn't, and it was just the sort of thing like they had to stop, go back, help them over, and it wasn't fun. And I thought afterwards I probably didn't even need to make them roll for that. But that was early in my DM days. I like the idea of passive insight, though. I don't think I've ever done that before, but most of my players, I would say, are quite untrusting, so they ask a lot to roll passive rolls. So
Yeah.
I've never felt that, oh, this person should know that before they have already been like, I want to roll insight on that. So
Yeah.
I think it's not been a problem for me, but I do like that. But yeah, passive perception and passive investigation, I use quite a bit. So they are two good ones. Cool. We've got should be studying over on Twitch, saying positive vibes. Thank you for swinging by. And we got another one from Fred. So, what is your opinion on the new cartoon from Critical Role, The Legend of Vox Machina? Have you watched it at all?
I have not. I have not seen any Critical Role. I think it's a great step for shows. Just, I mean, this is huge. I'm not the biggest fan of Amazon, so the fact that it's on Prime, I'm a little iffy about. But it's pretty dope. The fact that they got their story that they played D&D for, like, as a show, like a real show that's like on Rotten Tomatoes and stuff like that. That's great. That is such a huge step. And I think it's dope. I haven't seen it. I've only heard good things, but I should probably check it out sometime soon so I'm not constantly out of the loop. Yeah.
I think it is awesome that they've managed to get this and that it's got good reception outside of the D&D community as well, because everyone who likes D&D was always going to watch it and like it, but there's been loads of people who watched it outside of D&D and have been like, oh, this show's actually really cool, which is really good because well, it's just good for D&D as a whole, because hopefully now other producers are going to pay attention to this space and then do good. I have watched it all, and I have also watched Critical Role as a D&D stream, and I think they've done it very well. They've put enough nods to the campaign in there for the fans but the story itself still makes sense even if you know nothing about Critical Role.
Nice.
So I think they've done that balance quite well, because they could have quite easily accidentally made a show which was just for the fans and then didn't make sense for non-fans.
Right.
But I think they've done it quite well. So yeah, I'm a fan. It is extremely adult. I was not expecting it to be as adult as it was, because although like in Critical Role, the campaign, there's obviously violence because it's D&D, there's swearing, and there's like sexual references. I didn't expect them to go like full on adult. Like it's like gruesome. There's full on sex scenes and sex jokes in it. And
whoa.
Yeah, there's one thing that happens in episode 5, which I'm not going to spoil it for anyone, but I was just like, oh wow, okay, that's really adult. So yeah, good on them for doing that, though, I guess.
Yeah.
This isn't for kids. This is for our fans. Would you ever put Matt Damon in a game, and if so, would he be a pirate and why? What a question.
This is a bit of an inside joke. I think this is Matt. I'm assuming this is Matt asking this. Yes, I have put Matt Damon in a game quite recently, in fact, as a space pirate. Why? I thought it would be funny, and it was spur of the moment. And now I have to play Matt Damon as a space pirate. Yeah, if that's a testament to how generally chaotic my games are, yes, I will spontaneously throw Matt Damon into my games. Can I do a Boston accent? Absolutely not.
So is he? So he's an NPC. Is he
Yes.
a class? Is he a class? Or really?
We're playing Fate, so there's no classes.
Oh, okay.
But he does have a very high communication score, which means that he runs the spaceship's TikTok account, their space TikTok account. And it gets so much abuse and stuff saying, it's me, Pirate Matt Damon. And it's dumb. It's so stupid.
Definitely sounds chaotic.
Yes. Very much so.
Cool. They were also saying they watch Critical Role. And then, ha ha ha. So I assume it is
Yeah.
the person you were thinking of. Cool. On to another one from Twitter then. So we got Johnny Raindance here. Do you ever roll dice between sessions to determine events?
Typically, no. I like to keep that in game, so at least players know I'm rolling stuff. No, typically not.
But I have done it. Why did I remember doing this before? Oh, I for a small period just to see what it was like. Tried using roll tables and stuff to do travel encounters, and it was pretty terrible. So I won't do it again. But I was rolling between sessions there so that I could prepare stuff in advance and try to make it a little bit more exciting. Rather than so how I did it was I was rolling between, and then I was essentially having 3 encounters ready just in case they did come across something, and they were technically random, but just between sessions random.
Yeah.
That's all I've done in terms of that, I think. Because I use Foundry VDT, you can put on a thing where it rolls the monster's hit points for you. So usually you obviously get the set hit points, and then in brackets it says like 78 or whatever. It does the 78 instead of the set one for each of the people in the encounter, which is pretty good as well. Because it means one of your goblins could have 8 health and then another one could have 18 health.
Right. Yeah.
Your players can't predict it as much, so that's pretty good to do sometimes as well. So Sam's ability to let players explore chaos adds wild depth. I just wanted to point out the trust in players and confidence as a game leader. There you go. A good shout out to you there.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Cool. On to another one from Twitter. So Magic Missile Podcast asked, what's the best backstory question that you use when creating a new D&D or TTRPG character?
Ooh, that is a good one. Best backstory question. Wow. It's a good question.
Yeah, I think there's quite a lot of questions if you really want to get into depth of it. One that I quite like is, who is one person from your past that would love to see you again, and then who is one person from your past that would hate to see you again, or that would never want to see you again. And I like to ask my players that, because as a DM, it gives you a little bit of ammunition to put some stuff in, but it gets them to think, okay, what is something that I would have done in the past that would have annoyed someone, or what is something I would have done in the past that would have made a really good relationship. And I think that's that's a good newer question I've put in.
Yeah, I when it comes to I make characters every day. Typically when I make those, I don't take backstory into account. I'm like, this is a silly pun. Let's put that out there. But when I put out characters I'm actually going to play, I always like to ask, how does my past affect who I am now? Because if you have like a rogue who has this horrible tragic backstory, as is typical, but they're very kind of bubbly about it, you could take that in 2 ways, right? You could take that in one way where it's like, oh, this person doesn't understand their backstory, they're not being appropriately tragic. But at the same time, that could just be them coping with their past. They're trying to be positive in spite of what's happened to them. And kind of those deep connections between generally thinking, just bridging that gap between what has happened but hasn't actually happened, right? Just the story that you create and what you think is going to happen in the future is essential to running a 3-dimensional character.
Yeah, definitely. As an extension to this question, as a DM, do you have like a set of questions that you give your players to try and get some more backstory out of them, or anything like that?
Typically, I do ask for NPCs that they know in their past and whatnot. Usually I just let them do whatever they want, and once they bring me something, then I'll ask them, okay, what do they think of X, Y, and Z? Um, I personally don't like alignment very much, but I'll be like, what would they think of this situation? What do they think of this organization? Just general questions that come after they kind of they kind of barf it all up on paper. They get all the stuff out. Even like making up cities and stuff. I'll totally let you make up a city. We'll plop that bad boy right in the world. But then once we get that, we got to come to a compromise of what actually is, as opposed to
Yeah.
me creating their characters for them and them just going wild. There's that midpoint where it all intersects very nicely. And then I can tie everybody's backstory together in a way that'll make them go, oh, you're this person. And that's always fun.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Right, we got another question in here from Fred. So, what is your opinion on the new book, Monsters of the Multiverse? Have you seen anything about it yet?
I don't buy books anymore. I'm essentially all homebrew at this point. So I have no opinion. I don't know.
I was just quickly looking up when
Updated,
it's released.
updated reprint. I'm assuming for the playable races. I'm assuming that's the new errata for the ability scores and whatnot, and like the drow stuff.
Yeah, so I've seen some other people's videos on it. I haven't actually, because the book doesn't actually come out till the 12th of May, so it's quite a while yet. But they've been releasing quite a bit of information on it, and yeah, I've seen some of it. My view on this kind of stuff is always, as long as it's an option, I don't mind Wizards of the Coast doing whatever they want. If I can not buy this book and still playing D&D as I want to, great. And I think that's sort of my view, which most books are going to be like that. Like I can choose just to not put Volo stuff in my games if I want.
I mean,
Um,
it's your table though.
yeah, exactly.
Rule zero. You're the DM. You can run whether you like the new changes to races or not, where they remove the racial traits. Who cares? It's your table. You can keep them in. It doesn't matter. Wizards of the Coast isn't watching over your shoulder saying like, "Oh, actually, you don't have to have a strength-based Goliath anymore. So, why don't you change that? That's not according to the rules." Who cares? It's a
Yeah,
game. It's your game. You're the DM. Uh, to me, it doesn't matter. They can do whatever they want. You can have people making videos on both sides, being like, "Oh, it removes their uniqueness," or "Oh, it makes characters a lot more free to fit whatever mold you want to give them." To me, it doesn't matter. Choose whatever you want to play that will be enjoyable. It's this. They can Wizards of the Coast can release whatever they want as long as you're having fun with whatever guidelines you set from what they've given you as a basis. Who cares?
yeah, and I think that's the message here. I'm absolutely fine with all of these changes and stuff, as
Sure.
long as people understand that it's a choice. As long as that's how Wizards of the Coast keep doing this kind of thing, where because there's been a lot. I don't want to get too deep into this, but there's been a lot of talk of the whole NFT thing that Wizards of the Coast are doing at the minute.
Yeah.
And I'm in the same situation where, as long as it's the case of it's a choice, I'm okay with it. I'm not going to be partaking in it or caring about it at all. But it's if they start making stuff where it's like, oh, so instead of our book costing £30, it now costs £60 because you get a NFT with it and stuff like that. That's when it's like, well, I don't want the NFT, so
Yeah.
please
No.
don't. I don't
Not a
think Wizard
fan.
of the Coast will go that way, but I think that's with all of these books, people should understand like it's up to you what you want to run at your table. If you
Yeah.
don't like it, don't run it. If you do, do. happy days.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't think I'm ever gonna buy another Wizards of the Coast source book ever again because I know what I'm doing. I know what kind of game I want to run. I don't need any extra help, you know.
Mm.
And I enjoy homebrewing. I know it's not for everyone, but I mean that's the way I like to go. So I don't need to buy anything from them because I don't care enough to, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to be. I do because I have a YouTube channel talking about D&D, so I
Sure.
sort of have to keep on top of it.
Yeah.
But I do like the ones like the new not Tyranny of Dragons, the new drag. I forgot what it's called now. The new one which had loads of
Fizzy
new
bands?
dragons in it. Yeah, Fizzbands. That's it. I like that one just for inspiration's sake because there was a load of new cool stuff in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's my opinion. I don't think I answered the question at all, but my opinion is do what you want and have fun.
Yeah, exactly.
At the end of the day. Cool. So, any wisdom following a successful Kickstarter?
Don't maybe unless you got a really cool idea. It's a lot of stress. It is a lot of stress. It's a lot of time, a lot of money up front that you don't know you're gonna make back. So don't, unless you got like a nice base of people who you know will buy your stuff. But in terms of it being successful, I'm lucky. I'm thankful. I'm lucky. I'm glad it worked out the way it did. I had a lot of help from Realm Lord Media. If you're looking to start a Kickstarter, please check him out. He does a fantastic job at helping you navigate that kind of stuff, the business side of it. Real stand-up guy, did an awesome job kind of being like, all right, here's your stuff. Here's what we got to do, make your stuff work. I'm like, perfect, man. Let's go. But yeah, do not go into this thing blind because it will hurt if you do. Always have somebody kind of guiding you through it.
Yeah, I think that's some good advice. I think there are a lot of people out there that would like to do stuff like that, but are maybe hesitant. So that's probably quite good for them to hear that actually it's quite tough at the beginning, and you can lose money. I think people don't realize that as well. If you've not got enough of following or a good enough product that you're releasing, then you can end up losing money. With any of these things, I always say, and the same for a lot of people who are really serious when it gets to content creation, the bit of advice that I like to give is treat it like a business.
Yes.
Don't treat it like a hobby. If you're going to continue treating it like a hobby, it's probably not going to be as fun as you think it's going to be. So, but when you start to treat it as a business, your decisions get a lot easier because it's like, oh, this makes sense for the business. This might not be as fun for me, but it has this benefit for the business. So,
sad reality.
Yeah. Yes, unfortunately, but business can be fun.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Right, back over to Twitter. We've got about 7 minutes left, so if anyone has any last-minute questions, let us know.
Got one.
We got one of each. Oh yeah, I missed another thread question. How do you create your own homebrew adventures?
Inspiration just kind of strikes, and I'm like, hey, this could be an adventure. Typically, I'll come up with a world or a setting, and I'll just sort of build from it, and then I'll just have these random flashes throughout the day. Because I mean, I hyperfixate on it. I'll have these flashes like, what if the bad guy was actually X, Y, and Z? And I'm like, oh yeah, let's do that. And I tend to plan a lot out, but if the players deviate from it, I'm not going to be mad. You know, you just got to kind of react to that. But I've definitely had campaigns come out of just one shots I've run for fun. And people are like, I want to play this character again. I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. Let's go for it. And those are a little bit more difficult to kind of manage, but still a ton of fun.
Yeah, I think I like to have a theme that I really gel with and really like. So, for example, my current campaign, the whole low magic thing and magic being banned, I was like, that would be a really cool idea to run with, actually. But I have had a lot of ideas that I haven't run with because I've thought about it more and been like, actually, that's probably a terrible idea and not fun at all. But I think inspiration from media as well is good, be it films, games, TV series, books. Is a good way to go. I know you mentioned earlier Brandon Sanderson's books were an inspiration, and that's absolutely fine to do as well. Like, I think a lot of people try to spend too much time thinking of a unique idea, but there's not really such thing anymore. So,
absolutely not.
As long as you don't, well, I guess if you're not streaming it and stuff, you can do whatever you want. You could play, I don't know, a League of Legends game, or you could just play a game from Brandon Sanderson's books. But yeah, you have to be a bit more careful if you're creating content around stuff. Then it's a little bit different. Cool. Right, back to Twitter. So Sensei Suplex asked, how do you make interesting, memorable characters in D&D?
My philosophy is you could have the coolest backstory ever, that you've planned for years, but everything about a D&D character is in the execution, right? You could run a human fighter that you decided to jump into this campaign with, has no backstory. You come up with that stuff on the fly, and you have a DM that's willing to work with you on that, they will become memorable. I can assure you, as long as you are passionate about playing the character and you and the DM have good communication about what they're going to do or how the world is affecting them, it's going to be an interesting and a memorable character. I remember I ran a character in a campaign that I didn't make. Somebody else is like, here's a pre-generated character. It's this half-orc wizard. I'm like, okay, whatever. I guess I'll run this. My favorite character I've ever played, just because of how it's what is like the whole expression of creativity is best within tight restraints. And those were tight restraints, and you just have to kind of adapt to them. It's the execution of an idea that makes it great as opposed to the concept itself.
Yeah, I think that's a good message. I like to think of values and motivations at the forefront of a character, rather than, I think a lot of people get stuck on, oh, my person is nerdy, or my person is this character trope. Whereas I think of it more like, my person values family, my person values time, or whatever it is. And I think that helps me actually understand the character more. And when there's a situation where you have to make a decision of A or B, it's much easier to be like, okay, well, my character values time, so they would go for B because that saves time. I think that's a good way to go as well. If I think about my most interesting or memorable ones, they were all a little bit mental.
Yeah.
They were all just extremely wacky. I've played, I guess, your normal fantasy characters, like the fantasy tropes, but the ones which have stood out have definitely been the ones which are just a little bit nutty and not very good adventures, really. But fun to play.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. So you got another question here. So tell us what you've learned from for completing a full season of an actual play podcast, and any tips for those starting out.
Oh, we made so many mistakes. Firstly, always use local audio. Never get like a Discord bot. It's going to sound horrible. I promise you it's going to sound bad. Get like people recording locally on Audacity or whatever. Audacity's free. It's phenomenal. And just compile all that afterwards and put together. Music is huge. Music does a ton to set the mood. Get a nice cool intro. Those are great. Collaborate with other podcasts. Be like, hey, you want to have a little ad spot in front of ours? If we get a little ad spot in front of yours, be like, yeah, sure. Help each other out. Don't kick the ladder if you've climbed it, That's a real big thing. As for mic quality and stuff, never be doing something in the background. Try to like remove squeaky chairs. Playing with dice is horrible, because then I have to scrub, because I edit the podcast. I have to scrub through the entire thing. If I hear like a little kind of like snap or something, like, okay, which one of these bozos did that? I have to see, like, oh, okay, and I have to, make it quiet. But you got to understand what you're getting into is hours of editing a week. Like, it's not some small little time commitment. You're like, oh yeah, we'll do a D&D podcast. If you want it to be done well, it is a massive time sink. There's a lot of stuff that goes into this, and I was not prepared for that originally. And definitely learn how to use whatever audio editing software you're using, or video editing. That's incredibly important.
Do you have any tips on the actual gameplay of these as well?
Yes.
Like, did you just turn on recording and play like you normally would, or did you make decisions?
We did originally. And that sounded okay. It was a little too chaotic, though. When it comes to actual plays, this is my experience, you really got to understand that there is an audience. Don't let that change how you play, but change how invested you are in the characters. Because if you put your whole self into that, right, as opposed to just viewing this as a game as much as using it as something people listen to, it'll change a lot of stuff, I think, for the better. Additionally, never be afraid to restart saying something. Like, if you're talking and then you stutter, which will happen to me, or you say or a lot, don't be afraid to say, all right, guys, we got this out. I'd like to say that again. That's fine. That is perfectly fine. Please do that, actually. Because just the constant kind of, like what I'm doing right now, the verbal fillers, those are difficult to cut out. And if you have this constant stream of talking where you're confident in what you have to say, maybe even you have a script, totally fine. Just those really bring things together. Makes it feel a lot more polished in the long run.
Yeah, I think there was definitely a D&D YouTube stream that I watched where the DM had scripted parts, which were just, rather than a lot of DMs, myself included, when I describe something, I'm doing it off the top and I'm sort of making it up as I go along a bit. I want to say it was High Rollers, but I might be wrong. But yeah, one of them would have an actual script so when they got to the city and they wanted to describe what the city looked like, it was a script rather than them just saying it off the top. And I think from a production point of view, that's absolutely fine. If anything, it's probably better for the viewers because they get a fuller, better description. So that is definitely a good tip. Yeah. Awesome. Well, that is all of the questions from chat answered. So that's Twitter again. I have put all of your links down in the description to your Linktree, your podcast, your YouTube, and everything. But do you want to let everyone know where they can find you and what you've got going on coming up?
So you can find me here. I don't know if my tags appear in that way. At our Roleplaying, which is for the podcast. You can find my personal Twitter where I'll post generally inane stuff at Sam Cummerford24. And what am I doing coming up? I'm going to be on a lot more streams, I think. If you want me to be on your stream, shoot me a DM. I'll probably say yes. Because I enjoy that kind of stuff. So, yeah, kind of where I'm at right now.
Nice. Cool. And we will be back here next Sunday at the same time with a different guest as well. If any of you do have questions that you didn't get answered while you were watching this, put them down in the comments after the fact as well, and I'll get to them next week. But yeah, thank you very much for coming along. That was a great chat, and thank you for helping me answer all these questions.
Thank you for having me.
Right. Cool. And I'll see you all next week.